week after the FBI arrested and charged a domestic terror group for plotting to kidnap the state's governor, Gretchen Whitmer. That plot shining a light on the visible rise of self-described militias. They're not militias. NBC's Cal Perry is in Lansing, Michigan, with more, where one of these groups shut down the State House earlier this year. They shut it down. They were armed. They were angry over gyms not being open. Cal, why are we even treating these people as militias instead of straight up terror groups? Because that is what they are.
Well, we are not calling them militias. As you said, they describe themselves as militias. These are armed groups, and certainly the ones that have plots to kidnap, put on trial, and execute a governor are terror groups. There is no arguing that. Now, there are 180 of these armed groups, these self-declared militias in the country that the Southern Poverty Lawsuit is tracking, and I can tell you the groups don't agree on everything. In fact, the main characters of our package condemned the plot that to kidnap the governor here in Michigan, and it is that not agreeing on things that I think has authorities very, very concerned. These militias are rising in a number of states. One of them is Kentucky. That's where we went to take a look.
Self-described militias are becoming a regular sight on the streets of many American cities, often dressed head to toe in military fatigues, often with firearms strapped to their chest.
We are security, and we do uphold constitutional rights for people, whether that's, I tell people this a lot of the times, whether that's our constitutional rights or others.
Nick Alsager leads the group BEAR, Brothers on Equal Amendment Rights.
Do you think that's inciting, standing on the street with a...
No, because you got to remember, you have the right to hold a weapon no matter what. I think it's people making an assumption based on what they believe.
We've seen you out in Frankfort, in Louisville. Why does your group come out on the streets?
To make sure everything remains peaceful when they're out there protesting.
Tara Brandow is the leader of another militia that she says has over 80 members. We've seen them outside Kentucky's Capitol, heavily armed at rallies against COVID restrictions and on the edge of demonstrations for Breonna Taylor.
We don't want the towns burnt down. We don't want anybody shooting each other.
But law enforcement says a militia presence makes their job more difficult.
It does not help the situation. It only exacerbates the situation.
The police are doing all they can, but they got their hands tied and a lot of people against them.
Guys, we've got to keep our composure. You understand? We cannot put our hands on somebody like that.
And the increased presence of these militias has led many in the city to take precautions.
We have the Revolutionary Black Panther Party who is going out security.
Are you worried about the presence of militias in Kentucky?
I'm definitely worried about the presence of militias in Kentucky, especially since the legislative body that I serve in voted to allow people to open carry without a permit. Our legislative body has been very clear that it supports institutional and systemic racism. It's sending a message to these white militias that you're welcome here in Kentucky.
Do you think that some of these white militia groups are racist?
Well, some are, and some of the black groups are racist too. I don't vouch for either one of them.
Southern Poverty Law Center has photos of you carrying Confederate flags. Some people say that's racist.
Well, some people say it's racist, some people don't. People in my group are Puerto Rican, blacks, Cubans. I've got a mixture.
These groups so visible now that this became a defining moment of the first debate.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
So you thought it did kind of speak to your group?
I think it did. I think it did. And I think the reason why he said to, stand back and stand by was, he sees it the same way.
And like many, he fears the election could bring unrest.
Are we talking civil war? Because people say civil war in these groups all the time.
I think that's a possibility. I think it's probably a really close possibility. And though most people will try to make it a black and white thing, I don't think it's a black and white thing. It's a right and left thing.
Now, the fear of violence in a place like Louisville is palpable. You saw it there when the Black Panthers came out to protect that march. And speaking to Nick, he says he's going to try to coordinate with other militia leaders, that he's already trying to coordinate to make sure that tensions stay down. But you can see, Stephanie, all of the elements are there. And the rhetoric that the president used, it matters. It matters because these groups, they listen, Stephanie.
Correction, other domestic terror groups Can anything be done to stop them? I mean, I'm really taking your last question. Could we be close to a civil war? And that man said there's a really close possibility.
Listen, the laws in this country, especially a place like Kentucky, right to carry state. People can stand on the street in groups with guns. You cannot march in formation as a militia. There's an anti-militia law in Kentucky. But when you look at the gun laws and you look at the open carry laws, you look at the right to carry laws, you can still stand on the street in a group. The laws are ineffective. Those militia laws are ineffective in stopping people from gathering. And if you try to pass legislation, that restricts some of those gun laws, that restricts some of people's rights to assemble, you're going to see what you saw in the Capitol building behind me, which is an occupying force that is well armed, Stephanie.
Cal, this is really important reporting. Thank you so much. We're going to stay on this. That wraps up this very busy hour. I'm Stephanie.